every person, everywhere to
pressured a potential Chinese business partner.
I just answered the question. I just said.
What is going on in Russia versus Russia? Kamala Harris makes remarks about the anniversary of the ending of Roe versus Wade. Hunter Biden has a new problem with a whistleblower in the IRS. And Joe Biden is slipping in the poll numbers yet again. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
Actually, their name's Jobob.
Live-ish from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Monday, June 26th, the year of our Lord 2023. Been off for the last couple days. Been traveling, doing a really cool documentary for the Daily Caller, talking about defunding the police. We were in Austin. We'll be in LA today, and then New York, and going to find some interesting stuff that I probably haven't heard before in that documentary. But I digress. Getting on to the things of today. We're going to talk about the Russia thing, but just because I feel like that might be a longer conversation, and we'll probably throw that later on and kind of cover the basis in this political horse race that's going on in 2024 or for 2024. First, a couple days ago marked the year anniversary of the ending of Roe versus Wade, and it appears by so many standards and so many metrics that I think Democrats / Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to make this a key point in their 2024 presidential campaign. A lot of insiders saying the same thing, and who am I to not believe them? Having said that, it is kind of funny in this weird trans people thing world, how the language has morphed itself in talking about Roe versus Wade versus other issues. Now, over the weekend, a lot of the pride parades happened. I believe Pride New York happened. There was a big thing in Vancouver that we'll get to maybe tomorrow. Some of the clips from that are fascinating to watch and interesting to see, and also so difficult to blur. So many naked people, so many bad words, regardless of what you think of just the pride thing in and of itself. We've talked about pride and what it's become now. I've said this many, many times. I have a bunch of gay friends that are like watching these same videos that we're going to show you later on, probably tomorrow, if I can figure out how to censor all. There's too much. There's too much to censor. All of my gay friends are like looking at that also and going, "What the hell is this?" But anyways, because of all that, because of the craziness, especially in June and what Pride Month is, and because the president has said, now verbatim, he's on board with the protect trans kids things, which is crazy, just crazy. Not even from an ideological standpoint, but that's obvious, but from a nobody here agrees. The overwhelming majority of the country, if they haven't heard of the specifics, hear the specifics and go, absolutely effing not. No, we do not do that. Yet the president is on that side. But because all of those things, we have clips like this. The joining of the trans thing and the Roe versus Wade thing have given us Kamala Harris with new language that then puts her up for criticism on the front of so many other issues. This will make sense in just a second. I'm going to play this clip for you really quick. But keep in mind the language that she's using in order to appease the trans people while also talking about Roe versus Wade. They miss each other. Watch this.
We stand for the freedom of every American, including the freedom of every person, everywhere, to make decisions about their own body, their own health care, and their own doctor. So we fight for reproductive rights and legislation that restores the protections of Roe v. Wade. And here's the thing. The majority of Americans are with us. They agree.
We'll get into some of the polling that she claims later at the end there. But notice the rhetorical twisting that it used to be not all that long ago. We need to protect women's rights. Now, I don't agree, by the way, just for the record, I don't agree with her on the whole abortion thing. But we're not relitigating that right now. But if I were her, and if I were the DNC, and I were lefties talking about this, we need to stand up for women's health care, right? It's hard for me to utter those words without caveating and saying, okay, but this, and this, and the other thing, and that's not. I don't agree with their statements, but I don't understand how just a couple years ago they were able to say, women, we want to protect women. And now, I don't know if you caught it, Kamala Harris is saying everyone everywhere should be able to make decisions about their own body. It's vomit-inducing, the whole idea of using the language that they use, which is totally inaccurate and horrible. But again, not all that long ago, it was women's right to choose. That was the saying. And now it is everyone, everywhere. Because Kamala Harris can't alienate the trans people while, quote unquote, standing up for women's rights, supposedly. Again, I would argue vehemently against that terminology, but this is not, you all know the stance already. And then she talks about the polling. The polling is interesting. So I am, personally speaking, pretty hardline on abortion, just in terms of what I think. And you don't have to agree, but I've been convinced of the life begins at conception argument. Having said that, I also understand the politics of that. And I don't know how to navigate that situation in politically speaking. Because we've talked about this many times. The polling on this is abundantly clear and hasn't really changed ever. In the first trimester, a lot of people are uncomfortable. Americans as a whole are uncomfortable, possibly, but still think, if you're going to have it legal, it's got to be within this window. And then after that second trimester, it completely flips, and there are very few people in support of it in second trimester, and then third trimester, only the radical extremists, which are the most vocal on the lefty side of the aisle, on the quote-unquote pro-choice side of the aisle. Only they're the loudest voice, and they're the only ones that actually think that should be a thing. But you want to talk about everybody agreeing, at least legally speaking, first trimester, pretty much everybody says, not pretty much everybody, but the majority of the country says, maybe uncomfortable with it, but fine. And then after that, it's a complete no-go. Where was I going with that? So anyways, they're going to make that a huge thing in the 2024 election. That's going to be Kamala Harris's big thing that she's going to be talking about in 2024 as they go to run for president with Joe Biden. Must be nice to be a Biden, except for not in this particular case. The polling is not great. This is a new NBC poll coming out. I believe they polled from June 16th to 20th. But this is Chuck Todd on Meet the Press talking about the polling not being great. What is this? This is approval and disapproval. Now, disapproval and approval are interesting because even in the low 40s, you can still get reelected with that. Anyways, watch this.
Biden's job rating sits at just 43%, about where it's been since the withdrawal from Afghanistan. 53% disapprove. A full 68% of voters, including 43% of Democrats now, which is twice what it was in 2020, say they are concerned that Biden does not have the necessary mental and physical health to be president.
68% of people are concerned, which, the 32% of you that are not concerned, what would have to happen to make you concerned? I realize that if you're part of the 32% that doesn't think that Joe Biden has the waning brain of an 80-year-old man, you're probably not watching this. But if you know anybody who is in that 32%, I would love to hear their reasoning. If you could ask them for me and say, hey, what would it take? So there's that. But this is another interesting stat from that poll. Let me check this out.
Just 20% of voters believe this country is headed in the right direction. 74% say the nation is on the wrong track. Let me tell you something about this moment. We have had this sustained period of 70% about a year now. The last two periods in the history of this poll that we've had this kind of sustained negativity about the direction of the country was before the 92 election and before the 2008 election. Both of those changed the party controlling the White House.
Interesting stat there, saying that the last time this poll was this bad for this long, the party with the White House lost. Now, generally speaking, well, White Houses go back and forth, who controls it. But I am curious what that 20% of people that are on the right direction is. It's probably those hardcore, like, never Trumpers that are like, I don't care what's happening. As long as Trump is out of office, that's a good thing. But in terms of inflation, the super weird housing market, I heard this on a radio show. This is not an original thought. Actually, if you've heard a thought on this show, it's probably secondary. But someone was saying, if we have unprecedented statistic or unprecedented time after unprecedented time after unprecedented, the housing market is unprecedented, the inflation is unprecedented, all of this is unprecedented, the outcome is going to also be unprecedented. Unprecedented times unprecedented plus unprecedented divided by unprecedented equals also unprecedented, probably. And so with that, I think nobody quite knows where we're going and what's going on here. So to say that we are in the right direction, headed towards an almost guaranteed unprecedented outcome, is weird. Those are probably the people, the hardcore trans people, who have pulled a seemingly moderate, regular president to the left of freaking Lenin, with the whole trans kid stuff. They're probably making up that 20% plus the never Trumpers ever, which is fascinating. But speaking of Biden's, this is going to be, I think, a bigger story long term. So last week, when Hunter was charged but not prosecuted for a bunch of crimes and effectively pled guilty to, like, not paying his taxes timely enough, which, who cares? Honestly, I'm on Hunter's side of that. Yeah, don't pay your taxes on time. I mean, unless you get penalized for it. But you know what, Hunter? I agree with you. I don't like paying taxes either. But got hit with a slap on the wrist, and because of that, there are multiple whistleblowers coming out. I believe multiple. Maybe it's just one prominent one. Coming out saying, hey, this whole Hunter Biden being charged by the DOJ is weird, and he should have been prosecuted much more heavily. That's not even a word. Much more heavily than he was. This, I believe, is from ABC. It's about a minute explaining what's going on here regarding Hunter and this new whistleblower thing. So check this out, and we'll discuss on the other side.
Republicans on Capitol Hill who insist he got off easy, releasing a whistleblower transcript alleging the younger Biden got preferential treatment. The lead IRS agent investigating Hunter Biden telling Congress they uncovered evidence the president's son pressured a potential Chinese business partner to move ahead with the deal by invoking his father. Allegedly writing in a WhatsApp message, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. The message was allegedly sent in 2017 when Joe Biden was already out of office and Hunter Biden was heavily addicted to crack cocaine. His lawyer today saying any verifiable words or actions of my client in the midst of a horrible addiction are solely his own and have no connection to anyone in his family. The White House counsel's office adding the president was not in business with his son. The president standing by him.
I'm very proud of my son.
Yeah, so that's going to get interesting. The bottom line is Hunter gets this sweetheart deal, which shouldn't surprise anyone. We've gone off on that long enough. Shouldn't surprise anyone. And now there's whistleblowers inside the government saying, yeah, hey, we missed this entire thing. What? That is interesting, though. Hunter in 2017 saying, I'm sitting here with my dad, as if there's some sort of contingent on Joe Biden's approval, trying to get, quote unquote, the deal done. The messaging goes on, and we can, it's not really worth diving into. But the bottom line is, I think Republicans as a whole are going to not forget the simultaneous treatment of President Trump versus the treatment of Hunter Biden when it comes to doing things wrong, especially with Joe Biden. And again, this is not absolving Trump of any of the kind of weird stuff that he's done. But at the same time, consistency. It's just a whole thing of consistency. Now, I wanted to play you this clip because I don't know, I think this is fun. It's not really important. It's not really anything groundbreaking or news-breaking. But KJP was asked about the whistleblower, and she skirted around it and didn't do the best job. Anyways, here's KJP being asked. She gets a little flustered, and it's enjoyable to watch. Check this out.
Kirby wouldn't answer James's question, though. Are you going to answer the question? I mean, not a reasonable question to ask, but the President of the United States was involved, as this message seems to suggest, in some sort of a coercive conversation for business dealings by his son. Is that something, if he wasn't, then maybe you should tell us?
So here's the thing, and I appreciate the question. I believe my colleague at the White House Counsel has answered this question already, has dealt with this, has made it very clear. I just don't have anything to share outside of what my colleagues have shared, and so I would refer you to him and the DOJ. Just not going to comment from here.
Text message
What I can tell you is I know that my colleague has dealt with this. He addressed this at the White House Counsel. I just don't have anything else to share. I just answered the question. I just answered the question.
Yes or no, was the president involved in the shakedown attempt?
Stephen, I just answered the question. It's not up to you how I answer the question. I just answered the question by telling you my colleagues at the White House Counsel has dealt with this, and I would refer you to them. Go ahead.
She's pulled that a couple times. It is not up to you how I answer the question. Yeah, but you can hold people accountable. If somebody asks Karine Jean-Pierre, what time is the president leaving for something? And she says, lima beans and green peas. I guess in theory, you could say you got away with answering the question. And now that's obviously a much more drastic example of what's going on here. But I don't think, just interesting. It's just interesting. I wish the American people would pay more attention to this sort of stuff because she just refers back to the White House Counsel rather than answering the question. And obviously reporters are upset about it. So there is that. All right, here we go. Getting into this. What the heck happened in Russia over the weekend? Now, if you've been following this for a while, you probably know all of these things. However, I'm going to explain it to a person as if somebody's never watched this type of thing before. Not watched this. Isn't following this. So, zoom out 30,000 feet. Russia invades Ukraine. A big part of that is a mercenary group. The Russian military is the Russian military, but they also do contract work, not the military. We're off to a bad start. The Russians hire contracted mercenaries, and that's not really a new thing. probably most prominently is what's known as the Wagner Group. It looks like Wagner, but everyone says Wagner, just so you know, in case you've seen that in a headline. The Wagner Group is a bunch of paid mercenaries headed up by this guy named Yevgeny Prigozhin. He's the guy that's not Putin in this one. Yevgeny Prigozhin has a really interesting story. In the 80s, he spent in prison. In the 90s, was a business person, and I believe later on past that, was Vladimir Putin's chef. Was really kind of interesting. I believe went to the States and served George Bush, W. Bush. So this guy Prigozhin is high up there in terms of a skill. He was a chef for a long time, called Putin's chef. Somehow becomes in charge of the Wagner Group, which again is the mercenaries, and they go around the world, quote unquote, protecting, I'm using air quotes in case you're just listening just on the podcast, protecting Russian interests around the world. So they do a lot of pillaging of resources in Africa. That's what the Wagner Group does. When Putin invaded Ukraine, the Wagner Group had a bunch of people from their group go into Ukraine, including Prigozhin, fighting for the Russians against the Ukrainians. Most specifically, and probably most notably, Prigozhin and the Wagner Group, quote unquote, won the now pile of rocks that is Bakhmut. Okay, so all that happens. Prigozhin is very, very outspoken against the Russian military and how bad they are and how bad they are doing. And by proxy, Putin, I think sometimes specifically says things outwardly against Putin specifically, as opposed to Shoigu or Gerasimov or any of these other military important people. That boiled over the weekend, and on our Friday night into Saturday morning, Prigozhin, the Wagner Group, the mercenary group, had marched on Rostov-on-Don, which is the Russian Ministry of Defense headquarters in the southwest region. Imagine, if you will, a group of paid military mercenaries of, I don't know, ex-Navy combined with criminals and ex-Marine, all of these people that are making up this localized group. Imagine if those people took over San Diego and Camp Pendleton. That's kind of the equivalent of what happened in Russia over the weekend. Prigozhin and the Wagner Group went into Rostov-on-Don, and on Saturday morning, basically controlled the city without firing a single shot, at least I think. No resistance was met, and they effectively took over the Russian headquarters for the military in that region, which is crazy. Again, imagine if a bunch of disgruntled Navy SEALs, ex-Marines, took over San Diego. Damn, whoa. Then he says we're going to infiltrate Moscow. Now, Prigozhin doesn't say just that. He says this is a march for justice. The reason why they're all upset, I missed that entire part, is because they are very outspoken of the badness of the Russian military, Shoigu and Gerasimov. And they also think that they are not getting the weapons they need, the ammunition they need, and because of that are suffering bigger casualties than needed when fighting against the Ukrainians. So they go, instead of marching deeper into Ukraine, they go back to Russia to quote-unquote protest. Prigozhin calls it a march of justice. Vladimir Putin comes out and says this is an insurrection. Anybody heard of that term before? I feel like that's been bouncing around. More interestingly, if you have an insurrection with an actual military, as Prigozhin did, that's probably what an insurrection should be called. Anyways, we won't get into that whole terminology debate. So Putin comes out and says that this is treason, which he doesn't not have the right to say that. And Prigozhin then begins his march towards Moscow, which everybody, including myself, on Saturday around like mid-morning was going like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen here? And then randomly, Prigozhin stops, turns the Wagner Group around. Prigozhin goes to Belarus, and we don't know what's going to happen with the Wagner Group. Now, all of that, if that is a decent enough summary of what's happening, I feel like in my mind it's easier with like maps. Maybe I should have like put something on there. Bottom line is, it was looking somewhat likely that Prigozhin might overthrow Putin over the weekend, and then mid-march to Moscow, he just turned around. Now, there are a lot of people, I'm sure, commenting right now. As you may have guessed from not bringing any comments, this is a little bit earlier in the morning before we broadcast this, what it actually goes. I would imagine there's some people in the comment section that this is a psyop. In other words, Prigozhin and Putin are working together in order to confuse the rest of the world and further advance their causes in Ukraine. I will say this. I have no freaking idea. And I think anybody who claims to 100% know what this is not being as intellectually honest as they should be. I think the entire world is looking at this situation going, what is happening? Could it be that Prigozhin, for some reason, is able to get away with bad-mouthing Putin more than anybody that Putin has been able? Remember during COVID, a bunch of the doctors that didn't like the Russian vaccine fell out of windows. In other words, Putin does not take kindly to people bad-mouthing him, especially people that march an army up to Moscow and take over one of his military outfits in one of the regions of Russia. Putin is not a big fan of that sort of thing. So why then is Prigozhin allowed to continue bad-mouthing the dictator of Russia and get away with it? And also, that's the argument for the PSYOP, and also, the Russian military is horribly weakened at the moment, and maybe Putin doesn't quite know if he can withhold this guy and maybe needs to negotiate with him. I have no idea. The bottom line is, over the weekend, it looked like there was a possibility that the Russian dictator was going to be overthrown, and this guy, Prigozhin, was going to effectively be the next ruler of Russia. Now, it should be stated, and I should have stated this much sooner, Prigozhin is not a good person. This is not a good thing. Overthrowing Vladimir Putin is a different cocktail at a bad bar, I guess. Maybe that's I don't know if that works as an analogy. But Prigozhin is a monster in and of himself. So to say that this is somewhat better, I don't know. The people that are anti-Putin are saying, "Oh, this is a great thing." It is not. Somebody summed it up best. There was a skirmish over the weekend over the world's largest nuclear power, which is not something you probably want to be skirmishing over. But the bottom line is, I don't know what's going on. I don't think anybody knows what's going on. I'm not even sure they know what's going on. I'm sure there are several false flag type operations that Putin has planned with Prigozhin, and who knows if this is one of them. We'll all be waiting to see what happens here. I didn't bring any video from that because there's so much out there. You can go look it up. Just type in Russia. I was going to say type in Russia or Putin. You don't need Prigozhin's difficult to spell, so I don't know. You can type in all that, and you can see some of the videos of everything that happened over the weekend. But that's a brief summary of what's going on, and who knows how that's going to affect the war in Ukraine. Wow, that was a lot. But regardless of whether or not it was a lot, that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We are in LA today and tomorrow shooting a documentary for the Daily Caller. all around this whole defund the police stuff. And we'll be in New York on Thursday and Friday. Probably not going to do a show those 2 days. But the documentary will be well worth it. So appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts. Just type in JOBOB, be able to find me pretty much dang anywhere. Instagram is probably where the most fun is happening. Super excited. We're working on the fall tour, so that should be fun when it happens, but you can keep up with all of that on any of the social media platforms. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.